Welcome, podcast world. You get to see all these lovely faces on your screen now.
Ooh, we're on a little earlier than we normally are.
I don't know how lovely all of them are, but each is to their own.
I feel pretty, oh so pretty.
Each his own on that.
As long as you feel pretty, that's fine. I'm not gonna judge you.
Yeah,
Nothing at all.
I don't know how the rest of that song goes, so I can't sing it.
Yeah, I'm not a big West Side Story fan, which kind of infuriates me that Spielberg's doing a remake because that's going to make me go see it because I go see every Spielberg movie. But yeah, I don't remember the words to that song either because I just don't like that.
Well, I remember
I don't really like the story of West Side Story. It's obviously it's Romeo and Juliet and everything, but I've never bought into the idea, of the singing, dancing street gang. So,
well, I don't remember it from West Side Story. I remember it from a Julia Roberts movie where she's trying to break up her best friend's wedding.
My best friend's wedding.
Yeah, that's what I remember it from.
I think they make reference to it, but yeah, the song originates in West Side Story.
Yeah.
Oh.
So here's something I saw this morning, guys, and I think this is asinine.
Ooh, this is something about West Side Story. This should be good.
No, it's definitely not. There were people starting yesterday, guys, at 5:00 in the evening. People started lining up to tailgate for the fucking Clowns game today. So people slept overnight in their cars and shit to tailgate for the fucking Clowns game today.
That's a little excessive for
All
any
right,
kind
I
of
agree.
tailgating.
Bitch.
I agree.
Sorry, I'm swearing at the fact that I see the Cowboys just kicked a 56-yard field goal to win.
I figured they were going to win.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I screwed up today and put the wrong quarterback in. Some bitch.
I put the right quarterback in. I put Matt Stafford in. I knew Josh Allen was not Josh Allen. Who's the Buffalo Bills quarterback?
Josh Allen.
Oh,
Josh Allen.
Josh Allen.
He probably. I'm assuming he played pretty good. They won 35-0.
Yeah, but he didn't.
Allen
I
didn't
don't
have a
think
great
he scored as many
statistical
points as
he had
other quarterback.
170. Yeah, Allen.
One touchdown, 2 interceptions, which sucks because I had Dave Carr on the bench and I just started Dave Carr over Herbert.
So this will tell you a little bit about our league and how weird it is.
You mean Derek Carr, right?
Yeah, Derek Carr. That's what I meant.
So my other cut.
I thought I said Derek Carr. Did I say David?
David Carr.
Fuck it. I don't give a shit. The Carr brother. The Carr quarterback. D Carr. There you go.
So I had Matt Stafford and Josh Allen. Now Josh Allen got 19 points. He threw for 179 and 2 touchdowns and 1 interception. Matt Stafford threw for 278 yards, 2 touchdowns and an interception, but only had 1 extra point and threw for almost 100 yards more. How's that? So I'm going to lose this week because I had Jarvis Landry who got 1 fucking point. What a fucking bum.
Did he get hurt?
Huh?
Did he get hurt?
I don't think so.
I thought somebody for the Browns got hurt, one of the receivers, and they said he might have tore something. Was it not Jarvis Landry? Was it the other guy?
Let me see.
I have to look.
It was Jarvis Landry.
Yeah, he might be done, Jeremy. They think he tore his MCL or something.
Yeah, it said he's going for an MRI. But I definitely put in one of the wrong people because I had Pollard for Dallas, and he's got 25 points right now.
Yeah, some weeks it's a crapshoot. My quarterbacks score more points than my opposing team's quarterback, but he's just had more players. Like Lockett scored 32 points for him. McLaren scored 28 points for him. I'm like, shit. So it is what it is.
Well, I know one person that's not coming out of my team, and that's Cooper Kupp, because that dude is fucking money for points.
That's Stafford's best friend right now.
I thought he had a big day.
He did.
I'm pretty sure Tom Brady's a point machine right now too.
Yeah, he did.
He had 5 touchdowns.
Yeah.
So yeah, but yeah, Cooper Kupp had 38 points, 9 receptions, over 100 yards, and 2 TDs. So that's very productive for a wide receiver.
Hey, I gotta enjoy the 2-0 Denver Broncos for the brief.
I know. How about that shit? Your team's the only team that's 2-0.
I know, but they also play the Giants and the Jaguars, and they play the Jets next week. So I'm like, the Broncos are going to be 3-0, and then reality sets in.
Hey, all that can be, to be honest, is a confidence booster because, yeah, they're not playing the best teams, but when you're not playing the best teams, it gives you a chance to really kind of work on the overall game and get things set up for those tougher games.
He's played pretty good both weeks.
Yeah, and it really comes down to, I mean, you got to beat the weak teams in order to get there for the first place. So,
yeah.
Especially with it now, as the 17-game schedule and everything. So, you got to beat the team in front of you. Yeah, so.
Yeah, it means a little bit more right now.
I'll try to for me, probably me and Joe. College football's already over.
Give two shits about college football at this point. I watch the games. I'll watch the game. I watch other games because I watched Pat's team last night. Penn State versus Auburn. That was a good game.
Yeah, I'm not like trying to rub it in on you guys, but I did find that stat that I was seeing yesterday to be pretty remarkable. How it was only the 5th time in 43 years that Miami, Florida, and Florida State all lost on the same day. That was like, damn.
Yeah.
But then when I saw the Florida State score, because I hadn't actually seen the Florida State score until after I saw that tidbit, and I saw the score and who they lost to and everything, I went, ew.
Their offense is horrendous.
The funny thing is,
they have no identity, none whatsoever.
They played well against Notre Dame, which just makes me kind of confirm, especially the way Notre Dame's actually been playing. Look at Notre Dame's defense, just been that good. So, like Notre Dame's got a bitch of a stretch coming up here where they, I think they got to play in a row. I think it was Wisconsin, Cincinnati, somebody who I'm forgetting. I think it was Virginia Tech and USC, and there's no way they're winning 4 of those games. So, well, they played through 3 games.
Yeah, next week's game is Wisconsin at noon in Soldier Field, I think.
Bear Stadium.
Yeah, it's at Soldier Field because they were supposed to do that last year at Lambeau, but
why would you want to go to that shithole?
Well,
that just be hate on the Packers.
This is the whole Shamrock Series game. I think where Notre Dame plays a significant team at a neutral site, which is just basically meant to be like a recruiting showcase, where they can go to a place where it's like not a home game for them, but it's also not an away game. A true road game. So that's the way Notre Dame does shit still. So.
Well, it's funny. You talk about Green Bay. Now, I didn't see Green Bay. Green Bay did not play today.
They play tomorrow night against the Lions.
Okay, I thought that's
Monday Night Football.
So I had to laugh because my dad's a Green Bay fan. He's been a Green Bay fan since he was a kid. So because that's all pretty much he got was Green Bay and like one other team because he had 3, 6, and 10 were the only stations that you had when he was a kid. But I had mentioned to him, I said, the Green Bay is probably not going to be is not going to be good. And I don't know if they still will be or not, but week 1, they did not seem to show that they were going to be a good team, even though he got another good wide receiver, back that he had lost. And my reasoning is this, because I truly believe in locker room chemistry. When you go off as he did and cry like a baby about you don't get me anybody, you don't get me talent, you got, I want to be traded if you're not going to bring anybody in and act like that, what does that say to your teammates? You're a prima donna, you're a crybaby, and who the hell wants to play with somebody like that? Especially when it's your quarterback. Okay, Darth Pat would like to play with a crybaby. Okay.
No,
I mean, there's rumors that
I'll play with that crybaby because he does win a lot.
Well, true.
People think he's shitting the bed on purpose right now too.
Yep, Zach actually said that, and Zach's a Packers fan, and Zach said that. So
I didn't see any highlights of their game last week, so I'll just.
I was watching it. It was bad.
Yeah, it was horrible.
Bad.
I mean, the end result was obviously like, wow, I can't believe they got demolished that badly. And then, especially when you go look at what the Saints did today, the Saints went to Carolina and got beat by 19 points.
Yeah, today was the Jameis Winston that I've been used to seeing over his NFL career. Last week was like an aberration.
Yeah.
Well,
so
here's the thing with
the Lions.
here's the thing with that though.
Tomorrow, yeah, then maybe there will be some credence to what you're saying.
Carolina's defense is better what people are giving them credit for. I will say that because the Saints offensive line could not take care of the defensive line for Carolina. I watched that game today. Yeah, they were just. I wanted Winston to do good, but they didn't do shit to help him out at all. And they were on Kamara every single player. They were double teaming that guy, and Kamara couldn't do shit either. So Winston was forced to force shit like he used to back in the day because their defense was just really Carolina's defense is really that good, legitimately.
Well, yeah, and Green Bay's defense is not very good.
No,
but
we'll probably still beat the Lions tomorrow because the Lions are the Lions, and you got rid of a good quarterback, and you have Jared Goff, and he's not Matthew Stafford.
No,
so
but it's just interesting because it wasn't just the defense that was a problem in that game. The offense looked like shit. Like they were terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Like he miscues and everything. Like it just looked bad, and it just I was like, what I thought and what I told my dad is exactly what I felt like I was seeing was guys did not want to block for him. Guys did not want to necessarily, I don't want to say didn't want to catch passes, but passes that maybe they would have normally caught, they didn't catch. It was not the normal Packers offense that you get used to seeing, that can run up run points up on the, on the scoreboard sometimes with very little try.
Yeah, well, definitely not. I mean, it's a good first 2 weeks so far. Some good games.
Oh yeah,
interesting stuff. We'll see.
Good today, Jeremy, huh?
So defensively, they did until the end of the game. Offensively, they looked a lot like what I got used to watching last year, and it was they'd start moving the ball, and then something would happen, and they'd punt, or they try for a fourth down play, and they get stuffed. Just a lot of that this time, and it just made me real. And I hope this was just a fluky game because of the fact that they were playing the 49ers, and the 49ers do have a pretty decent defense. At least the front four is pretty damn good.
They have a good defense too.
But it reminded me of last year, and that's kind of what I expected to see last week. So it kind of sets you up for like, oh, you're going to see something. You're going to see maybe some firepower out of this team, and you saw what you thought you were going to see last week, but didn't get to see it. So we'll see what the next week brings. We'll see what.
I guess at least our team didn't lose like Pat's, where the guy was offsides.
That's hardly the reason they lost that game.
There was more reasons than that. I mean, I was watching the game because my friend Marlon is a Redskins fan, and he came down to visit for the last couple of days. So we were watching that game, and we were just like, "What the hell?" There was some.
So a giant lined up off sides
on a field goal.
He didn't line up. He jumped. He jumped off. He went too early. Put it that way.
I said, "Who dat?"
My friend Marlon. You've met Marlon.
No.
No. What?
You said something before that.
He said,
I don't know.
Is a Redskins fan?
Redskins. Who dat?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So Washington football.
He's the Washington
team,
football
blah,
team
blah.
fan.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Now I know
Yeah.
what you're talking about.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
There are no more Redskins.
Yeah. It's
Yes,
what,
we
2
made
years
sure
now,
in
and
the
it's
19th century.
Yeah.
yeah, and it's still
That was two
ingrained in my
Florida
head.
State kickers in that game, Joe.
No, but I know there was some controversy. Like he was insisting he wasn't actually offside and blah blah blah. I mean, two things about that though. Like I said, there were plenty of other reasons as to why they lost that game, other than Lawrence being called offside. And two, I don't care if you weren't actually offside or not. It's a game-winning field goal attempt. You can't even afford to be flagged for anything. So it's just, ugh. But these are the Giants, and what was the stat I saw? I mean, they've had one winning season and one playoff appearance since they beat the Patriots in Super Bowl 46, which was 10 years ago. And I think I saw that they're tied for the Jets for the worst winning percentage in the league since 2017.
Woohoo!
It's like when you're a Giants fan, you always hear about the lean years, which were from between 1964 and about 1981 or so, where the franchise literally couldn't get out of its way for the better part of a decade and a half. They got old. They got shitty. They had made the wrong coaching choices. Did you know that at one time Vince Lombardi and Tom Landry were assistant coaches for the Giants?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. But the Giants wouldn't promote either one of them to head coach, so they went and they sought their own opportunities in Green Bay and Dallas, and the Giants were saddled with guys who weren't nearly as good coaches. But then, they didn't get talent. They didn't draft talent well or anything until basically the Parcells era started. But I'm now starting with these last this last decade. Basically, it's pretty much get that same feeling that I'm sure Giants fans had during that time of where it's just it's an inept franchise that can't seem to get out of its own way, where they can't seem to evaluate players properly, where they make the wrong coaching hires, where they make the wrong front office hires. And, it's really just, to me, it really starts with ownership, but ownership's never going to change.
I know that feeling.
The funny thing is I love mock draft, right? And I love watching mock drafts all throughout the season and everything, because I love to see how guys go up and down the boards as the college season progresses, and then of course as the draft order changes as the teams play and everything. And so of course you already got people publishing 2022 mock drafts after not even 2 weeks. And the funny thing is, most everyone I've seen so far, and it's based upon the way the season started, has the Giants picking, once if not twice in the top 10 because they have the Bears pick. But their pick is always higher than the Bears pick. And they keep making reference to Dave Gettleman making the pick. And a commonplace I've seen them having the Giants pick is 4th overall. And I'm just when I'm reading these categories saying, if Dave Gettleman was able to pick this guy, because one of them had him picking the guy from Oregon, the defensive lineman who didn't play against Ohio State, who everybody says is the consensus best pass rusher in college right now. People making comments if Dave Gettleman had this guy fall to a number 4, he'd be doing backflips. And I'm like, motherfucker, if the Giants are picking 4th overall, Dave Gettleman ain't making that fucking pick, because his ass is going to be fired. So
be somebody else in there.
Yeah, it definitely will be. It's if they're picking 4th overall, which means that they won't have won more than 4 or 5 games, there's no way that he's getting another chance again. Now, the coaching staff might be one thing. You can make an argument, well, the coaching staff deserves another chance because of this and that, but through the first 2 games, I'm totally fine with him cleaning house because, Garrett was annoying as shit last year with his play calling, and it still has been, but I thought he actually called a pretty decent game. On Thursday night, he reached into the bag of tricks, a lot of the, stuff to try to keep as much pressure off Jones as he could, because we still know the offensive line's a piece of shit. I'm going to curse out Tony Schiavone one of these days for that, but that's another story. But Judge made a bunch of bad decisions, and the defense has played like shit through first 2 games. So everybody was praising Patrick Graham last year. It's yeah, where the fuck's your defense been this year? It hasn't shown up.
Yeah.
So
I want to go back just for a moment, because we were talking about the Eagles, and it was funny because at the end of the game is where they kind of imploded a little bit and caused themselves to lose that game. Derek Barnett, who is their defensive end, I can't stand this dude. He came out of Tennessee, and they were making a big hoop and holler about him, oh my God, he's the guy that broke Reggie White's record for sacks at Tennessee. And I'm like, okay, that doesn't mean shit. He played all fucking 4 seasons Reggie White only played 3 before he left for his professional career. So that's one whole full season. That's 16, or no, not 16, 12 games, 11 to 12 games. That's a big difference.
Yeah.
And he's done exactly what I thought he would do in the NFL, pretty much nothing. He's either injured or, like he always does, when his team starts to lose and he doesn't, and he's frustrated because he can't get in the backfield. He couldn't, because he's not a sack machine in the NFL by any means. He's average at best. He commits personal fouls, and that's what he did in this game. Loose ball, fumble that went out of bounds. Doesn't he hit the running back who's got his back to him and clubs it and creams him and gets a 15-yard personal foul? I was like, that's fucking awesome. Good job, you douche. And that's what I expect of him. I was just like watching it. And then I was just like, well, there that goes. And of course, then they got another personal foul as the 49ers were driving. One of the DBs, the guy was going down, and the DB, there was nothing the DB could do. It was going to happen, but the guy got hit, and he like lowered his pads and shoulder and head, and the DB came in because he was going to hit him like in the legs, and the guy had doubled over, and then helmet to helmet, contact, and personal foul for that one too. I was like, oh my god.
There goes the flags.
It's like, oh, son of a bitch.
I'm ecstatic right now because I don't care who wins this game, but Derrick Henry scored his 3rd touchdown to tie the game up against Seattle. So now Derrick Henry has gotten me 49 fucking points.
Nice.
Sweet. So now I'm only 9 points behind whoever turned down for Watt is.
That's my cousin Roger.
Yes. And that's helping me because I have one more person left to play and he has 0. So I have Edwards-Helaire playing tonight. So I'm not sure what Derrick Henry is going to get me because it's going in overtime. So I'll see if it gets me any extra points, but just need Edwards-Helaire to score at least 10 points so I can pull out this win for this week.
Nice.
For making a mistake of putting the wrong quarterback in.
The Eagles just re-signed that one guy from Florida State like yesterday, I think. That Sweat. They just gave him.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Josh
I
Schwitty.
just doing a couple searches for Derek Barnett. First of all, 19 and a half sacks, 29 tackles for loss, and 65 quarterback hits in 48 games over his first 4 years. So, 48 games over 4 years, obviously you can see that he's missed time, like you said.
Oh, yeah, he's injured a lot.
And so, yeah, those numbers are pedestrian, middle of the road. Well, they're not bad, but they're not great.
Yeah, they're pedestrian. That's a good word for it. I just think it's funny. Yeah, use that.
So like when I just typed his name into Google, like I'm seeing or finding like a couple of articles where it's asking, what does Josh Sweat's contract extension mean for Derek Barnett with the Eagles? Because he must be playing on his 5th-year option since he's in his 5th season. I don't know, considering that they have him and that they just signed Sweat to that extension, and they have Brandon Graham. That tells me they're just letting Derek Barnett walk after this season. So
yeah, Brandon Graham got injured though, and it could be they're not sure how bad it's going to be. They're thinking ACL, so that could be it's definitely the whole season, but it also depending on how bad it is and if he can recover, it could be a career-ending injury sometimes too with that one. So we'll just have to wait and see.
That blows. Though it's hard for me to have sympathy for a guy who went to Michigan and plays for the Eagles.
Yeah, Anyways, I think
Double
it's
whammy
time
for Pat.
I think it's time to move on, and we must talk. We have to talk about this because we all watched it now, and that is the plane ride.
How do you know I watched it? No one asked me.
Yeah, I didn't. Joe may not have watched it, Jeremy. The other 3,
did you not watch it, Joe?
No one asked me if I watched it. None. You
I'm
just started
asking
talking
you right now,
about
Joe.
it.
Did you watch it?
No one of you fuckers would say, "Hey, Joe, by the way, did you watch this?"
Hey,
Joe,
I just figured from our text exchange that you were going to offer your opinions when you had.
Joe never really chimed in though, so that's why I was like, I don't know.
So the question is being asked right now, Joe. Did you watch the plane ride from hell?
Yeah, I did finally watch it. Yes.
Okay, so as I was about to say,
rarely is the question asked, is Joe watching Dark Side of the Ring?
So we have to, being wrestling fans and watching this episode, which was absolutely freaking bonkers, we got to talk about Dark Side of the Ring, the plane ride from hell.
I saw Tommy Dreamer like made an apology, like he.
Well, let's
Yeah. So
kind
Yeah,
of start
if
with the
you
program and then deal with the fallout.
if you
So-
want to call it an apology,
I did not see this. I might have to look this up.
Well, I think it came in kind of late today, but again, I think we should discuss the program first, then talk about the fallout from the program.
So on the Dark Side of the Ring released a new episode called "The Plane Ride from Hell," and I'm gonna have to defer to our historian or AJ for a little bit better understanding. But the Plane Ride from Hell happened in the WWF age. It was before they got the F out.
It was right before, like
Yeah, right
literally
before.
right before.
Yes.
yeah,
And it was a European tour. They had rented a private 757, I believe they said it was a 757. And they used the same 757 to travel all of Europe and then back home to the United States. And the plane ride home to the United States is where all hell freaking breaks loose. And some definitely inappropriate stuff happens to the staff of the plane, as well as some things happen between the wrestlers, and guys don't take some of the jokes that were being played very well and kind of get into fist fights and all kinds of crazy shit. So I'm amazed that plane didn't fall out of the sky hearing some of the things that happened, especially the part with Brock Lesnar.
Well, Zach has flown before, and he has his pilot's license. And he said there's no way that door would ever open, no matter what. He said that door does not open, so like it doesn't matter who came in contact with it. He said that door would not have came open. So
yeah, so it was very interesting, and evident, and the way they described it, from that things as the time went on, like from flight to flight, it kind of got increasingly worse as a whole to begin with. Like every flight they got a little drunker between flight,
well, and then they had
destinations.
They had the 7-hour delay where they were on the tarmac. They said, I think that didn't help.
Right. So I mean, and you're talking about a 757 privately. They rented it private, so they have like all the nooks and crannies. Like there's no expense not being covered for them. All the booze that they can drink, all the food that they could possibly eat, and this was the day and age of pill popping, like the big day and age of pill popping. And it was known, but nobody got in trouble for it. Vince kind of swept it under the rug.
pretty much, because he knew what happened on that plane too.
I'm having a hard time. I told Pat this the other day. How did Vince not know any of this was going on? It's not like he was like somebody said when Brock and Mr. Perfect slammed in the door, like the plane shook. How did Vince not say, what the fuck is going on back there?
Oh, he knew.
Well, see, that's an interesting thing. I don't know if Vince was actually on that flight now, based upon something else that came out yesterday. Coachman said that Vince and Linda were not on that flight.
Oh, okay.
They said people are conflating Vince being on the flight with the one where he tried to take down Kurt Angle, like wrestle Kurt Angle in the plane and everything, because like Vince got a little tipsy, I guess, for Vince, and it was all like, I'm gonna take him down.
Good luck.
And of course it didn't work. So because that was one thing I was commenting on, because I thought that was on the plane ride from hell too, but they never mentioned that at all. Now, obviously, they had a lot of other stuff that they were talking about, but they never mentioned Vince trying to wrestle Angle, to the ground or anything. So Coachman could quickly, but the way that the program was depicting it too, and I'll wait for that. The way the program was depicting it too was that if Vince was on the flight, it's like, JR, you're head of talent relations. Go deal with the talent, So he was like forcing JR to be babysitter, which JR clearly resented when you listen to what he said and how he said it. Here I am having a bunch of babysit a bunch of grown men. What the hell's going on with that? Which, yeah, good point. So
I feel like he might not have been on the last flight. I feel like he was on the other flights from city to city, but he might not have been on that last one specifically.
This was one flight. It was one flight. It was when they're flying from London back to, it was Newark or New York or Hartford or wherever the hell it was that they were landing in the States. It was one flight. So, they didn't have like a changeover. It's just that they
no, Joe thinks Vince was on the flights in between the cities, the others.
Oh yeah, that may have been possible.
Yeah, but not the last flight to home. He might have,
right?
Vince, he probably could have fucking, like, him and Linda could have hopped out early and got their own plane and, and headed the fuck out of there.
Well,
and went home early.
That's a good point, because I'm saying to myself, I don't know if Vince McMahon's sitting on the tarmac for 7 hours.
No, there's no way he's sitting on the tarmac for 7 hours. Absolutely not.
He'd probably force his way off the plane somehow and be like, God damn it, I'm getting out of here.
So one of my favorite parts from the stories that were being told is Michael P. Hayes
getting his ponytail.
He goes and punches Bradshaw in the face, and Bradshaw stands up and bitch slaps him and knocks him the fuck out.
It's like, I don't.
That's awesome.
I don't understand exactly what he's doing. I mean, now he's a pretty notorious bad drunk. There's been plenty of, incidents with him over the years where you've heard about him getting drunk and making an ass out of himself or saying something stupid, like he embarrassed himself at Triple H and Stephanie's wedding. He said something really fucked up to Mark Henry once.
That's why they cut his ponytail off, because he had it coming.
Yeah, so
he's a notorious ribber too, and half the time they go bad.
Yeah, so here's the thing. There's some things that happened on that flight which are definitely just dismissible as guys just having too much fun, guys just getting caught up in the moment. X-Pac cutting off Michael, Michael Hayes slapping JBL punching Michael Hayes back, and then X-Pac cutting off Michael Hayes' ponytail. Yeah, that's just, that's like pranks and shit.
That was funny.
Kurt Hennig slapping shaving cream on somebody's head fundamentally, is just like a prank. And because we know Kurt Hennig was one of the biggest, pranksters.
Maybe he just didn't pick the right person to do it to.
No, he definitely did not.
Yeah.
The thing with Kurt Hennig, though, Kurt was never afraid of anybody, so he didn't give a shit.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like Brock was in no mood for that. So,
Well, we know Brock. We've heard a lot about Brock, and Brock is not. He don't want to be. Don't bother me. I'm not a people person. He's very well known. I'm not a people person.
Exactly. So, but again, Jesus. So I lost my.
That stuff's all like
that in and of itself is just like, okay, yeah, whatever. Now when Brock and Hennig start fighting, whether it's play fighting or not, and they're like tearing up the inside of the plane, and they are slamming into the side of the plane, whether the door could have come off or not. Now you're starting to take it a little too far. Now you're getting out of hand.
Yeah, just a little bit.
So that basically is where the kind of, harmless boys will be boys stuff ends and the serious shit begins.
Well,
the stuff with Goldust and Ric Flair and Scott Hall.
Well, and it was interesting, like Terry Reynolds was on, she was on the plane and, and that. But it was interesting for her to tell a story about Brock Lesnar. Now, this is prior to being on the plane. He evidently exposed himself to her, like in one locker room, like as Goldust is sitting there. And of course told her to no sell it, don't pay it any attention, don't sell it. Like
famous
why?
words in the back.
Like I don't it's just interesting, like that is so majorly inappropriate at any time, like just to show your dick to a female. Like I don't get it. Like I don't know how that kind of stuff went on even back then. Like that was just okay. It's okay. We'll just sweep that under the rug. Like
I'm not surprised it didn't happen. That's for sure.
That's why it happened. That's why it was able to happen. Well, what does Dustin tell her to do when Brock flashes her? Don't tell it. Don't sell it. What does Paul Heyman say to her on the flight when Goldust is drunkenly serenading her? Don't sell. Don't sell it. Don't sell it means don't get him in trouble.
Well, yeah.
That's what it means. And, you know, the person saying don't sell it could offer the defense or the excuse, well, I knew exactly what would happen if she went to management and complained. She'd get in trouble. She'd get, you know, potentially get fired and everything like that, which, yeah, that could very well be true. But that kind of goes to show you just how fucked up the whole thing is when that's people's primary concern is either that, oh my God, she could get fired if she tells what happened to her, or, you know, oh my God, she's going to get, you know, him in trouble. And that's not going to be good for the company. And that's not going to be good for business and everything. And one thing that I think you could see, because I can guarantee you those two things that she talked about in this special were not the only things that ever happened to her in her career, because she was in the business for a while. You know, she went back in like the late 80s, early 90s in WCW, and then she went to WWF. So she was in the business for over a decade. But you can kind of tell when she's just sitting there and she's like telling those stories, and you just look into her eyes. Those are the eyes of somebody who's suffering from PTSD. That when just the very recollection of the events, it's taking them back to a place where they were numb, where they were powerless, where they couldn't do anything, where they were stuck. And yeah, it was obviously a traumatic experience for them, and just taking them back to it and reliving it does the, you know, just puts them right back in, you know, it puts them back in that scenario, and, you know, they're revisiting something that they'd probably rather not revisit it. So, you know, just the very fact that she gets up there and is still willing to tell the story is still fairly impressive, because she didn't have to, you know.
No.
So, and you see the same thing, like I said, where you know, you're hearing her tell the story, and, like, you know, you're looking at her eyes and everything. You could see the same thing when they were talking to the flight attendant, whose name is escaping me now, which is
Addie or whatever.
Was it Heidi?
Heidi Doyle.
Yeah. Yeah, Heidi Doyle. Thank you. You know, you could tell that when she was telling about what happened to her, that again, it was an obviously traumatic experience for her, which she would really rather not go and revisit. And, you know, it was pretty terrible, you know, as to what happened and everything. Because, I mean,
RVD's like the only person that came.
Result, but there's a part of I want to get to in a second that I kind of would have more questions for him. But everything with Flair, it's like walking around the airplane
naked
and doing tricks with his with his baby's arm, as they refer to
evidently
it.
his well-endowed nether regions.
His dick tricks. Yeah, go ahead.
As they always refer to it on the Tony Schiavone podcast, because they've told plenty of stories about Rick's dick on that. You know, that's one thing. If he's just walking around making an ass out of himself because he's drunk or been a fucking idiot, that's one thing. The experience that she described when he cornered her in the galley and he's trying to make her touch his dick, that's sexual assault, plain and simple.
And I'm willing to bet money that's happened more than once. Like, it's happened other times. We're never going to know about it, but I'm guaranteeing that it happened somewhere else at some other point in time with him.
Yeah, no.
I've heard other people mention other stories about various things with Flair over the years, which, yeah, I don't know if it raised to the level of like assault or it was just Rick being an asshole. Because I'm sorry, flashing females, you know, if you feel like you need to do that, then that is a pretty asshole thing.
Yes.
Pretty thing, really. But yeah, people like this, if they don't get caught, if they don't get called out,
They continue.
They don't change. They keep the behavior persists. So,
Joe, what were you gonna say?
Oh, I don't remember at this point.
Oh.
I don't. I know. Well, first off, I mean, we know Flair lived his wrestling gimmick to the fullest inside the ring and outside the ring. Just is what it is. So there's none of this surprises me, to be honest. I've seen people go on, read interview scripts and stuff like that, and see podcasts where other wrestlers back in the day traveling with them has told stories about stuff.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, Tommy Dreamer probably never saw him, Flair do this to be that aggressive towards a woman. And it seemed like he didn't even notice he was doing it on the plane, but yet, RVD, plain and simple, saw everything that happened too. So it's like RVD saw it. Who else saw it on the plane and just ignored it? But, everyone else is just like, oh, it's kind of funny how they were like, yeah, this is Flair's thing. He does it, and he just does this to make the boys laugh. I don't give two flying fucks how big your dick is, and I can give two shits. Maybe it might be funny one time when you're drunk. Excuse me. But if it's something you continuously do, that gets old pretty fucking fast. And I could really give two shits after a certain point. And I don't care if I'm 44 saying this, but I would probably say the same thing if I was 21 at the same time. Like, oh, yeah, man, that's fucking cool. Do it 10 more times. All right, bro. That's enough. That's getting fucking old. They just had a weird... It just seems like all the guys, majority of the wrestlers back then had this, it seems like a lot of them just had this weird thing that went on. They just did in the back with the drugs and the popping pills and, popping pills in people's drinks. It's funny when they're like, yeah, never leave your drink unintended because you never know what's going to happen. And that's like, that's a pretty shitty rib because apparently Scott Hall was that fucked up that he had no idea he did what he did to the flight attendant. Because to this day, he says he still doesn't remember doing that to her at all on the plane. And we know how fucked up Scott Hall was, but that's pretty shitty to give that dude who's already has a goddamn drug problem. Yeah, let's rib him and throw some pills in his drink and then let him drink it. Yeah, wrong guy to do that to, guys. Jesus,
guys, they should have. Flair should have been punished on some level for this. The fact he didn't get punished at all, that's when it happened, is crazy.
Well, yeah, when they asked JR, they're like, why didn't Ric Flair get punished? He's like as confused as anybody else. Like, he's legitimately like, he had to, the only thing he could come up with was he had too much clout. He had too much pull. He was too famous. Couldn't punish him. Which we all know is a bunch of bullshit, but JR's right there. He's right there with the rest of the people that are hearing this story as it unfolds, through Dark Side of the Ring and stuff like that. He shouldn't have been any different, regardless. Shouldn't have been any different.
If that was Sean Waltman who did that shit to that flight attendant, his ass would have been fucking punished. Mm-hmm. Or if it was, if RVD did it, no matter how big he was as run, he probably would have been punished too. Or some of the other ones, they probably would have been punished too. But there's that little upper echelon of guys. No, we can't do. No, just it's okay. Just please stop doing that, so we don't get no more complaints, and just keep going about your day.
Yeah. So I mean, for those of anybody out there watching who didn't see it, what Scott Hall did was that Scott Hall was drunk off his ass because he, of course, had his long history with alcoholism and substance abuse. And he was so drunk that when it was like getting towards when they were landing and that's like getting towards morning, the flight attendant comes, the one who Flair assaulted, comes by to try to like offer him breakfast and tries to basically shake him awake. And he like grabs a hold of her with enough force that it rips a couple buttons off her shirt and starts like drunkenly saying like what he's going to do to her, talking about like licking her. And I think he does lick her before somebody drags her away and shit. And like you said, that he's maintained that he has no recollection of anything that happened. And, they had to like put him in a wheelchair and wheel him through customs because they couldn't like get him awake.
Just incredible. Yeah. I was like, they actually had to wheelchair him.
Just to get him through fucking customs and everything. So the immediate fallout at the time Scott Hall got fired. Kurt Hennig got fired, which seemed like a bit of an overreaction based upon what he did versus what other people did.
Mhm.
And they did kind of mention that, like, everybody figured, well, eventually he'll come back and blah, 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 but he didn't.
died.
He died about a year later, but, that was also his own fault, unfortunately, because he died of a fucking cocaine overdose. So, I love Mr. Perfect, but, fucking 45, 6 years old, whatever he was at the time, and fucking ODing on cocaine, Goldust, I think, he didn't get fired then, because I know he was still with the company for the rest of 2002 and beyond. But I think he got a bit of a deep push for a while until I think they formed like the tag team between him and Booker T.
Mhm.
And I think he was damned lucky to not get fired. But yeah, like I said, Flair didn't get fired. Flair didn't get reprimanded in any appreciable way. And Flair had only been back with the company at that point for about 6 months, because he re-debuted with WWF. It was the night after Survivor Series 2001, so that was November. This was
May of 2002.
May, so he's been there for 6 months. It's like at the time I think they were still doing the whole thing where he and Vince were the co-owners. I don't think they had quite ended that yet because of Stone Cold walking out. No, they couldn't have, because Stone Cold wrestled on that show. So I think that was coming in a couple of weeks, but so that's probably one of the reasons why they didn't suspend or fire Flair or anything like that. But as I said, there's more questions I would like to have for JR based upon what he said, because he's saying like, yeah, it's a good question why he wasn't, anything didn't happen to him. I guess it was because he was too much of a made man. All right, JR, like you've been explaining to us for this whole fucking episode, you're the head of talent relations. What was your take? Do you think Flair should have been suspended, fined, fired? What was your recommendation to Vince? Oh, I think we got to let Nate go. You didn't say anything like that on the episode, and obviously they could edit it or do whatever they want. I just kind of I would like to think that from watching all these episodes of this series, that if he had said anything like that, it would have been in the episode on air. You would have seen it.
Mhm.
So
I'm sure that JR didn't want to fire any of those guys. He would have rather had,
Well, he said he had no problems firing Scott Hall, because he was like, he didn't think Hall was. He thought it was kind of. He's on record, I think, as saying he wasn't really on board with bringing the NWO guys back in the beginning, but he also didn't think that Hall had his substance abuse issues in check, and he clearly didn't.
Nope.
And so there was really no excuse to not fire Scott Hall.
Well, yeah, he knew he needed to go home and get his shit together.
Yeah, so it's like you need to get yourself straight, son. And Hall still didn't for years, but
no.
Yeah, it's just like I just have like there's like other questions I would want to ask JR, and just kind of hey, it was like, so if this is the way you felt, then how come you didn't say when you're being interviewed for the episode? I said, your friendship with Nate too tight for you to truly speak out against him. So again, it was a horrible situation. And then, like they said, when the plane landed, it was trashed. It was broken. It was dirty. It was covered in vomit and spilled food and liquor, and the flight attendants basically refused to clean it. And
I
when
wouldn't
they
touch that shit.
Yeah, and then when they reported what had happened to their bosses, the bosses basically said, "Well, we have to respect the privacy of our clients."
Yep, that's a pretty general corporate stance when you're making that kind of money off of a privately rented jet.
Yeah, it very much is, and it's just another reason as to why when people and let's just be honest here, women face shit like this, it's why they don't report it. It's why they don't come out and say anything, because they're told to hush up. They're told to not take it seriously. They're told to not sell it.
Yeah. So it's interesting, because we know shortly after that, that's when they get the F out, because they got the the court ruling. I think it finally got a court ruling with the WWF, the World Wildlife Foundation, and stuff like that. And then that's also shortly after that, they went to it left the Attitude Era and went to the Ruthless Aggression era of wrestling, and like they're scantily clad, like shit started phased out and everything like really changed because, as JR had mentioned in that episode, is Vince realized he had to change his product and start holding people accountable for their actions. So
yeah, and it's kind of like it was basically then where the like the next generation kind of started. It was the end of the the Attitude Era, so the end of the Austin Rock DX era, and it was the beginning of the Brock, Cena, Orton, Batista era, basically.
But it's interesting because the ones that caused the biggest problems on that flight were the guys that were not even part of the Rock Cena era. It was still like those guys that were the generation before them, like that caused all the problems. So it was like those guys couldn't grow up enough to realize, hey, I'm a fucking grown-ass adult. Flair is old enough to be a grandfather. Kurt Henning's getting up there as far as his age. Michael P. Hayes is definitely up there in age. The only one that wasn't up there in age that was, part of the Attitude Era and that got himself in trouble was Brock, because he was still the young guy. Like some of the other guys, most of the other guys besides like maybe Goldust. Goldust was probably in his late 30s at that time, somewhere around there, maybe close to 40. But a lot of these guys were fucking
30s.
old, and they're still acting like a bunch of children. Like, and not to say you can't have fun. Like, I'm not against having fun and acting like an ass, but there's a time and a place for everything. If I'm going to act like an ass and do stupid stuff, I'm going to do that in the privacy of my own home or somebody else's home that, that is probably family and knows that I might act a little stupid if I get drunk, I'm not going to do that on a fucking jet plane, that I don't own.
I told
believe it. Sorry, real quick. Believe it or not, Dustin Rhodes was still only 33 at the time.
Oh wow, okay, so he was relatively young.
I was at the Raw, this right after the plane ride from hell. That was the one I went to where I got the sign taken away. I was at that Raw in Hartford. I think I kind of knew it, but I had forgotten until I saw the date, and then I'm just like, okay, I know I was there because that's when Brock first kind of showed up on the scene. So I was at the show after the plane ride from hell.
Oh jeez. And the
Nobody
show
knew
went on
about
like
it
nothing
then.
happened.
Nobody knew about it then, but now I know I was at that show.
Listen, you always hear stories when the wrestlers do interviews and are on podcasts about the good old days. And Plane Ride from Hell is something that just seemed to be something that went way above and beyond of ridiculousness that, these guys went through, I don't care, 7 carts of alcohol, I believe it was, that they ordered. That's just insane. It just went way too far. But at the same point, this seemed to be like I don't want to say an everyday thing, but it was pretty fucking common amongst a lot of the wrestlers back then.
Oh yeah, a lot of those guys get drunk at the bar, go driving, drink on the road while they were still driving.
These are still guys who had come up through the territory system or had come up through the Attitude Era to the point where it was like, there's really no rules. Nobody's really policing their conduct. They had only been a publicly traded company for about 2.5 years at that point. So,
we're still selling. So
even though there have been plenty of scandals, like the steroid trials, which I can't wait to see that episode of Dark Side coming up in a few weeks, and other assorted shit. I think this was kind of like a wake up point for some people, but unfortunately, it wasn't a wake up point for everybody. Now, was it, Tommy Dreamer?
Yes. So here, I want to preface this a little bit. So it was very interesting because Tommy Dreamer, very well respected amongst the wrestling community, amongst wrestlers.
Always been considered one of the nice guys of the business.
Yes. One of the nice guys, yes.
Yeah.
And defends Ric Flair, which no problem with defending a friend, but it was the way he went about it. He pretty much dismissed
Yes.
the lady, the flight attendant, or stewardess, whatever their
He
technical
basically
term
said
is now.
lying.
Yeah, she basically said, well, that's her interpretation, and I can't imagine. I can never see Ric Flair ever trying to make somebody touch his dick. Like, essentially, you lying, your claim is false.
Right.
Then Rob Van Dam sees it all right there. He's like, oh, yeah, pretty much
it,
happened.
it was referencing the fact that, you know, she and the one other flight attendant, and kind of would have loved to have heard her story, but I mean, it probably would have been a lot of the same. And I could definitely understand where she would not be comfortable talking about it on camera, even after all these years. But sorry. You know, she sued and she took a settlement because her husband thought that was best. They, like she mentioned, she had like a newborn. She probably didn't want the notoriety and the publicity at the time.
Yeah, he did make a point of saying that too about she took the payout.
Well,
right.
yeah.
So that's what it is. So Dreamer's taking issue with the fact that she took the payout, and then you hear the sarcasm dripping from his voice saying, well, if that's what she really felt happened, then why didn't she see that this heinous person was prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law? And then he made the terrible joke about, people get offended by different things. People are probably offended that I have a double ponytail, and it's like, what?
I'm seriously offended by that double ponytail.
I'm offended by that double ponytail too. Not because
I'm not.
not because I know anything about like men's fashion or men's hairstyles. I get a fucking buzz cut every time I get my hair cut. But just because, well, it looks fucking stupid. But the fact that you're equating, oh, I'm sorry if you're offended by my double ponytail too. Oh, I'm sorry she was offended that Ric Flair tried to put her hand on his junk.
Yeah, it's a little different there, buddy.
Yeah.
That's a comparison where not only is it not in the same fucking ballpark, it ain't in the same fucking sport.
So Dreamer, as we have learned, tried to make an apology. So
after he was indefinitely suspended by Impact Wrestling. Yeah. Let's make sure we put that in there first too.
So here is his wonderful, and I'll read this for everybody just because I like to read. It's always fun. So regarding my comments on Dark Side of the Ring, it was never my intention to offend, hurt, or victim shame anyone. I understand my comments were insensitive and could trigger emotions in someone's own personal past. I do not condone sexual misconduct of any kind. I apologize to anyone I offended from the bottom of my heart. I am so sorry. Which pretty much, as we've seen over the years, is the very corporate apology, or not corporate, I should say, the very this is what my agent says I should say phrasing. So it's hard to say if he really feels that way or if he did that because, hey, I got suspended and I don't want to be suspended anymore and this is the way to clear it up. Who knows? But I personally feel this way about Tommy Dreamer. I don't hate the guy. He definitely did something insensitive with not, handling it better on Dark Side of the Ring. Can't say his apologies, but he definitely has a hard on for Ric Flair. Like, he definitely has a hard on. Like, Ric Flair is like God of wrestling, and then there's nobody else. Like,
I mean, he I don't like. It's okay to have an opinion on something and not be what everybody wants to hear, but he probably just shouldn't have said that. Like, he should have kept it to himself, because I say stuff sometimes that not people want to hear, and I don't always say the right thing, and I don't care. So, but I just think you have to be more careful nowadays what you say, because you're probably I've already told a couple of my other friends, I say, guys, if this podcast we do, if this was like going to lots and lots of people, I definitely would have to be more careful with some of the things I say, because I don't give a shit. And I definitely, so it's okay for you to have an opinion, and maybe it's not what everybody wants to hear. I just don't think he should have said it like on the program. If, whatever, some of the stuff he said, he shouldn't have said it. He should have just not said anything. I think he would have been better off with that. So, because I do think he doesn't really think anything really terribly wrong happened. I believe in his mind. I don't think he does think. That's the impression I got. He should have said anything. He would have been better off not saying anything.
Yeah, he definitely doesn't believe anything happened, but there's also a different way he could have handled it. You know, if he wanted to make a comment, he could have easily said something to the effect of, I've never seen Rick do that. Is it out of the realm of possibilities that Rick could have done that, depending on how drunk he was? Absolutely. You know, unfortunately, I did not see the situation happen. There is such a different way he could have handled it and said it with still knowing that in his mind, Rick didn't do this. Like,
Yeah.
you know, he just completely fucking dismisses it and acted like she was a total liar about the whole situation, and that was the biggest problem of it.
It was his tone. It was, like I said, it was the sarcasm that you could hear. You know, sometimes you can't hear sarcasm when somebody speaks. You could hear the sarcasm when he was making those comments. It also goes to show that he's probably just not very bright. We've been having this. No. Here's what I mean by that. There's been this reckoning playing out over the last couple of years in, like, you know, the entertainment and sports industries about sexual misconduct and everything. And the fact that he somehow didn't seem to realize that making the comments that he made were going to get people upset with what's been going on in the culture over the last few years just shows a fundamental, amazingly, you know, just like, you know, lack of, you know, wherewithal, basically. And getting back to what you were saying, Jeremy, about like the statement about being very corporate, it's what I like to refer to as the non-apology apology.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's more basically saying that he's apologizing because he got in trouble, but this is the way, and this infuriates the shit out of me every time I read one of these fucking apologies. I apologize to anyone I offended. You might as well be saying, I'm sorry that you all took offense to what I said, but I don't think I said anything wrong.
Mhm.
Why can't you just say, I apologize? Period. Just don't say another fucking word after that.
So does
Just say, I apologize.
Oh, that's how mad
was-
Darth
that
Pat
was-
is right now.
That was funny. that
No,
just happened at that moment.
But
But that's
seriously, all he has to do is say, I apologize. Nothing else.
does Ric Flair, if Ric Flair makes an apology, does that help him at this point, or should he just not do it then?
Not even
Well,
bother
it's-
because he
it's-
probably
it's
never
hard to
thought he
say.
did anything.
It's hard to say because the fallout from this, and this is something I really wanted to address, because there's been allegations flying around about various wrestlers over the last couple of years. There was allegations, and still are, I think, about Matt Riddle, about Darby Allin, you know, about some other people whose names I'm probably forgetting that, you know, have either gone by the wayside or this or that. I know there's been controversy surrounding Tessa Blanchard that doesn't have anything to do with sexual misconduct, and it just has to do with her conduct and everything. But
Overall conduct.
you know, Flair was also in this ad campaign for Car Shield. That's been suspended.
Yes.
You know, so they're basically waiting for the heat to die down to continue it. If they choose to continue it, they could just cancel it completely.
I really think AEW has to not. They need nothing right now that's any kind of negative. They need no negative because they have momentum. They don't need Flair. They need Flair not showing up. That's a bad thing.
What I was going to say is that, I mean, Flair was on Renee Paquette, you know, the former Renee Young's podcast, I guess, several weeks ago. And she asked him a question, I guess, about, hey, you know, the Plane Right from Hell, Dark Side of the Ring episode's coming up. And, you know, you've been talked about what you did on that. And he was saying something about, he gave a response that basically said, well, if I get in trouble over it, I know where the bodies are buried. As if he's got something to say about it
Somebody.
that would get other people in trouble. To be honest, I'd love to hear what he's going to say, but it ain't going to change my opinion much about what he did, you know, and everything. And getting to what AJ said about AEW, yeah. I don't know if you remember the "You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch" song. There's the line in it where he says, like, you know, I wouldn't touch you with a 39.5-foot pole. Yeah, AEW needs to put a 39.5-foot pole between themselves and Ric Flair. If they bring Ric Flair in right now, it would be the worst fucking thing they could do because they have a shitload of momentum. They're gearing up for these big shows this coming week, which I'm psyched to watch.
Yep.
because if they do it, then you're attracting attention to yourself in the wrong way, because people will go and say, hey, you also employ Dustin Rhodes and he was on this stuff, and hey, you employ Darby Allin still, and he's got
And Jim Ross.
He's got these allegations against him, and Jim Ross is tangentially tied to this, and every other thing. This is the exact wrong time for any kind of publicity like that. So AEW, if Tony Khan's got any thoughts of bringing Flair in right now, no, do not.
Tony Khan, if you're listening right now, don't do it.
I did see though that they pulled Chavo away because Chavo's the stunt coordinator on the Young Rock show. I thought they pulled him away because they were going to replace him with Flair. I did see that he was going irregardless because he has to go film Young Rock, so they had no choice. They had to take him away from Andrade. So I just don't think that they're going to put anybody with Andrade other than that guy that's with him now.
And that's perfectly fine because that works. They don't
Yeah,
need a third wheel right now.
Let him get over on his own. See if he can actually do it. But so AJ and I were having a brief phone conversation on Friday night, and we were kind of thinking, if you include scandals of any kind, which can include drug use, substance abuse, alcoholism, racism, infidelity, so anything like that. Was there anybody who wrestled in the 80s and 90s who was a decent person? And we came up with, we really came up with three names thinking real quick: Tito Santana, Ricky Steamboat, and Owen Hart. But it's like everybody else we could think of.
Triple H wrestled in the 80s, or he was just 90s? He came in the 90s, right?
Oh, no, he's not on the good side of that either.
Yeah, he's not. Jeremy said Triple H.
Well,
he's not.
The backstage politicking and the association with the Clique, and
the fact that he was banging Stephanie when he was still living with and
how he fucked over
still with China.
Yeah. Those are all some black marks against him. So it's like so many of these guys. Actually, I guess really Rock doesn't really have any of those issues that we know of.
Dwayne?
So.
No, you're right. He doesn't. If anything, he got picked on, and they, I've read that Michaels and Triple H tried to get him out of the business. They tried to get him to quit.
I remember Bret Hart writing about that. See, that's the thing. Like, Bret Hart's not on that because Bret Hart's admitted numerous times that he slept around on the road. So
just not with Sonny.
Yeah, with everybody but Sonny. Mick Foley seems like he's a good guy too. So I don't think.
All right, I'll give you Foley too.
I mean, if we really sat here and thought about it harder, we could come up. But again, the fundamental thing was, it's like, there's that old saying about, like, don't meet your heroes, and it's like, if your hero was a wrestler from the 80s and the 90s, there's a good chance.
It was funny to hear Rob Van Dam say that.
Yeah.
Rob Van Dam's like, there's that old saying about me. You don't.
Yeah, there's a good chance if your hero. There's a good chance if your hero was a wrestler from the 80s or the 90s that, unfortunately, they were a piece of shit. I mean, hey, we were sitting there at WrestleMania 2 years ago, and Hulk Hogan comes out to the beginning to that huge pop, and I'm the guy who cried when at 9 years old when Hulk Hogan got beat by the Ultimate Warrior, and the whole stadium's standing up cheering and everything, and I sat in my seat and didn't applaud for him that night because I still believe that he never apologized appropriately for the racist shit that he said. He gave very much one of those "be careful of what you say because you could get caught" speeches. So it's like when guys like the New Day still have issues with him. It's like, yeah, I fucking understand why. So
speaking of racist comments, many years ago now. Do you guys know who Dog the Bounty Hunter is? That guy?
Yes, I know. I used to watch that show.
He is, the show kind of tells you who he is, but evidently he spent some time in prison. And during his time in prison, he was very in with, as he put it, the brothers. Like, how old are you to call them the brothers? Like, that's just sounds terrible to begin with. But supposedly he was, very much, friends with the black gentleman in the prison. And so he thought he got a pass on being able to say the N-word. Like, dude, I don't care how down you are with any group, you don't get a pass on saying the N-word if you're white. There is no such thing.
I think
there really
there's
isn't.
I think there's only one white guy who does have that pass, but I also don't know. That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah,
And he still won't
He
use
still
it either.
don't, because
Yeah.
he's just like, that's like, even he knows, like, that's just, there's no need for it, you know, as a white person, just because there's too many bad ties to that word, with being white, like the history of that word being used from a
there's
racial standpoint.
there's nothing but bad ties to that word.
Yeah.
There is no positive connotation to that word.
No, absolutely not.
No.
So it's just like, the fact that it just made me laugh when I heard him being interviewed and he said that. I was like, oh my God, this guy is like completely out to lunch. Like, how much pot did he smoke that his brain is that dead? Like,
I don't
So,
know. It's fine. I think it was some other shit he was doing, rocking those
Yeah,
8 balls.
It was like when I made reference to Michael Hayes saying stupid shit. You know, it was like that thing that he said to Mark Henry one time, I guess, was that Hayes got shit-faced drunk and he went up to Mark Henry, who's, 400-pound, Olympian weightlifter, wrestler, whatever, everything. It's like slaps him on the back and goes like, hey, I'm blacker than you.
like why?
what?
It was,
how is that?
it was,
Like,
it
why?
was, it was something to that, and it's like, I'm like, motherfucker, you're lucky Mark Henry didn't rip your goddamn head off.
And no offense,
pretty
like,
much.
I don't know. I guess he wasn't referring to skin color, because Mark Henry's a pretty dark black man. Like, he's not light skinned by any means. So it's like, how, like, what were you judging the blackness of him on?
It's like you just combine him saying that to you, and you combine with all the times that he wore Confederate flag shit when he came out, when he was wrestling as a free bird and everything. Like, on those grounds alone, Mark Henry's got enough call to just beat the shit out of you and say, well, he had it coming.
Yeah.
So there was something that we were talking about, like, I think a week ago, and it was when Pat was talking about, like, the stuff with Shivani and, like, Adam Cole, and I actually think there's something to that now. Like, I read that Adam Cole forgot to call him a nerd, and Shivani, like, told him to call him a nerd, and it sounded like they had talked about stuff backstage, because this is going to be something that turns into something. I don't think it was a one-off. I think Joe said if it turns into something that progresses, it's better than if it's a one-off. I don't think it's a one-off. I think it's part of something that they're building, because Nicole showed me a picture of Shivani hugging Britt Baker, and Adam Cole sent a mad emoji. So
yeah, it was like awkward, because Shivani seemed to just like linger in the ring for too long. But it was like, yeah, it's like, I guess he was trying to tell Cole, you're supposed to call me a nerd. So he was like waiting for the.
It was Cole's idea to call him a nerd in the first place.
Right, because Cole said he's a nerd. Like, Cole said, he's like, I know I'm a nerd, so it'll be funny if I call somebody else a nerd.
Supposedly they talked in the back to see what they wanted to do about it, which is fine. If it's going to be something, that's great. If
I think
not,
it's going
that's
to.
the part that's going to suck.
Yeah, I don't think it was a one-off. I think it's going to turn into something. So
we'll see.
That's fine.
I still think it's a little silly to try to get heat with an announcer like that when the announcer is not a wrestler. But who knows? We'll see what they do with it. But just real quick, just to maybe try to put a quick bow on this plane ride from hell episode. So I listened to a bunch of wrestling podcasts. I listened to Jim Cornette's podcast. Cornette could reasonably called a Flair apologist. In that I've never really heard him say anything negative about Flair. I've always heard him defend Flair. He's usually been from the position of like, well, goddamn, he had to deal with Jim Herd on the WCW booking committee, and Jim Herd's a fucking asshole, and then he had to deal with fucking Vince Russo, fucking Eric Bischoff, and it was because of motherfuckers. Anyway, he's supposed to coming up on his on a edition of his podcast. Might have been the one that landed today. He was supposed to have an interview with the executive producers of Dark Side of the Ring, so that could be an interesting listen. But between that, then I listened to podcasts with Eric Bischoff and Tony Schiavone and Jim Ross, and they could all be considered Flair apologists. Bischoff and Flair hated each other once upon a time, but they're supposedly fairly tight now.
Mm-hmm.
And Giovanni's always been tight with Flair, and JR has always been tight with Flair. And of course, for those three guys, their podcast is hosted by Conrad Thompson, who of course
is married to Flair's oldest daughter.
Ric Flair's son-in-law.
Mm-hmm.
Between Cornette's podcast and between those three podcasts, and the next, I'll give them 2 weeks because, they might be recording ahead of time and shit like this and everything. I'm just going to be really interested to hear how they cover this, if they mention this, if they talk about it, and what they say about it. Because I'll say this right now, and this goes for Cornette too. If they try to dismiss this shit and play it off like it was nothing, say like nothing happened, that's it. Fucking turning you off. I mean, I don't care if one listener stops listening, but my point is that you can't just go sweeping this shit under the fucking rug after that. Because I think this is also what I said to AJ on the phone the other night. I sat down when that episode started and I was flipping back and forth between the Brooklyn Nine-Nine finale, the Giants game, and this.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like looking forward to just hearing like, an entertaining, recall of this, I figured this would actually be one of the lighter episodes of Dark Side of the Ring. That it was a fucked up situation, but nothing like majorly horrible happened. At the end of the episode, I was ready to fucking cry because I was like, watching that woman tell everything that she told. And you can just see like how much pain it's still causing her to this day, 19 fucking years later.
Yeah.
It was bad. So, I lost it. Like I said when I was texting you guys, I lost a shit ton of respect for Ric Flair, Scott Hall, and Tommy Dreamer. Flair, obviously, most of all. So, if these guys who always want to go out there and defend Flair want to sweep this under the rug, if they don't talk about it, fine, they don't talk about it. But if they bring it up and they take the Tommy Dreamer attitude about it, yeah, that's fucking it.
Right.
And you can't just no.
It's going to be interesting to see how the other people react to this and what they do on their podcast. I haven't gone on any of the podcasts yet to see what any of them have said about this yet, but I will the next couple of days, and it's going to be interesting to see what's been said and how much apologizing these people do for Ric Flair, because I'm kind of curious to see what some certain people have to say about it.
All right.
And it also would be kind of interesting to ever hear if there's ever any heat on Brock Lesnar for the flashing thing. But
all right, no more.
My guess is not. But I'm just curious.
No,
Cut you off with that. All right. Because if I don't, you're gonna keep going. You love to talk.
No, I guess that was it.
So I just want to do a real quick shout out to our good friend and guy who's been supporting us, and that's Rob T at All Around Detailing. So I just want to do a quick shout out to him. He constantly weighs in on some of the different things that we put out there, and is always out there liking our stuff. So please, if you are in like the Allentown, Bethlehem, Easton area, check out his Facebook page, All Around Detailing. He does great work. He's got photos of all the work that he does. Interior detailing, exterior detailing. He does
Window
paint
tinting.
correction, all kinds of stuff to make your car, or your vehicle, I should say, look really, really nice. So if you want to go in with a ride that's all disgusting and dirty and have him clean it up, he will do that for you. And he also does appointments to come to your house and do the detailing too. So really cool stuff. All right. Now, with that said, we're moving on to our next topic, which this was a post that we shared on our Facebook page because we are all game dorks. So I want to share this out, and we're going to weigh in essentially on which controller, like I already know which controller I used first, but just kind of go around the horn here and weigh in with which controller we used here. So I'm just bringing up the post. So the post is, which controller did you start with? And, number for anybody who doesn't know what these controllers are, that's maybe watching this, and I'll need a little help with this because I didn't have all these game system. I had I know most of the controllers, but I don't know them all. You got one.
Man,
is
I can tell you all of them, or Joe. I'm sure me and Joe know what all of them are.
Yeah, but you got Atari as number
Correct.
1, then you got Nintendo, you got Sega, Genesis. I think that's right. That's a Sega Genesis controller, I believe, or is that just Sega? No, that's the Sega Genesis. And then you got Super Nintendo. Then you got what is that second Sega controller?
No, see, I think the first one's, I think 3 is the regular Sega, and I think 5 is the Sega Genesis.
Yeah.
I don't know. I had both of those. I had Sega and Sega Genesis. I should say
5 is the Sega, because then you're going to get to the Sega Dreamcast on number 8. So
okay, that's the one I didn't have any idea. I was like, "What the fuck controller is that?" But then you had
I think 3 is Sega Genesis, and 5 is that when they came out with that extra. They updated the controller. It had that external thing that you can get for the Sega Genesis. That was like a extra thing. Go ahead, Jared.
And then you have the N64 controller.
Yes.
PS1. And then you said that's the Sega Dreamcast controller at number 8?
Yep, that's a Dreamcast. Yep.
Yeah, see, I didn't have that system. I think I played that one time because somebody I knew had it.
I got to tell you, you look at that Dreamcast controller, that's just so bulky.
It's gigantic.
But you know what? It worked for the game. It was a good controller.
Yeah, unfortunately, I never played Dreamcast, but yeah.
And then we have, of course, the PS2 controller. And then that's another Nintendo controller, but I don't know which
GameCube.
Is that the GameCube controller?
Yeah, number 10 is GameCube.
Yeah, see, I never owned the GameCube, so I had no idea what that controller looked like. And then you have the original Xbox, and then that's what Xbox. What is that Xbox? I forget what the next Xbox system that came out was.
I actually feel like they just changed the controller while the Xbox was out.
Okay.
I think you're right, because I was still working at Circuit City.
I think 12 is a 360. That doesn't look like a 360 controller to me yet. So
yeah, I think you're right on that, AJ, because like I said, I was still working at Circuit City from like 2001 to 2003, and I seem to remember there being this big deal about like the new Xbox controller. Like it had a different type of name, but I think you're right that was for the original Xbox.
And then of course you have the PS3, then the Wii, Wii U, PS4, then Xbox 360. Then you have, which I can never remember, the Switch. Thank you, because I don't know why I couldn't remember.
That is the 360 controller. Number 12.
Is it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, really?
Oh, that's right. Because then it went Xbox 360, and then Xbox. What was it? 1 was the next Xbox. It was Xbox One. So that number 17 is the Xbox One controller, I guess. And then number 19. What is that? That's Xbox One.
So that's the Xbox. It's the Elite controller.
Oh, the Elite controller.
It has paddles on the back. I have that controller.
And then 20 is that's the PS5 controller.
20 is the best controller on here. So I would take 20. I would take 20, like no questions asked. I don't fuck all the rest of them at this point. So
I've never held that one. I don't know how is it just the way it feels in your hand is that good, or
it's just because it's I didn't like the Sony controllers before this one. I didn't like the PlayStation controllers. I didn't like them. They were almost too tiny. So I think that Sony borrowed from Xbox a little bit and tried to make their controller a little bit more like the Xboxes, but theirs is just the best version I think theirs is kind of the best version of both. It's like they took the Sony controller, mashed it with the Microsoft controller, and got the best possible thing they could get.
Yeah, because I always looked at the Xbox controllers as these big, bulky beasts of a controller. I'm like, damn, this thing's fucking huge.
They don't have the Wavebird on here either. The Wavebird, when it came out for the GameCube, that was the first like wireless controller. That was one of the best controllers ever at that point in time.
Yep, I remember that.
So
my favorite controller to use is number 10.
Okay.
The GameCube?
The GameCube is my favorite controller. Yeah.
Well, I'm a bit of a minimalist, so of course I'm taking number 1.
So for me,
that's because you really like playing with joysticks, Pat.
No, it's because I always like playing Asteroid, you know.
And for me, that's where I started games like Atari 3600, the 7200. That's where I started.
Yep.
So started at number 2.
So that was
started
the thing.
with number 2, Nintendo.
When Joe answered number 2, that really surprised me because like I'm the youngest of the 4 of us, and I had an Atari, So, like I use that controller and everything. So to hear that Joe didn't use that controller, I was a little surprised by that.
Another game system that's not on here that should be on here?
TurboGrafx?
TurboGrafx 16. Yeah, sure. But in television, did anybody ever play in television?
I've played it, yeah.
I probably played it, but I have very few memories of it.
There was a ColecoVision too.
Yeah. Television was a cool controller because it had a pad on the top that was like a touchpad that you kind of did like circles, like to move it around, and then it had numbers on it too, like you type in numbers and shit.
5 and 8 are the only controllers on here I've never used.
I have used. So let's see. I've 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 9, and then 13, 14, 15, 16. I skipped all the Microsoft stuff.
Yeah, Jerry doesn't mess with Microsoft.
Nope.
I used number 1, but that was after the fact when Nintendo kind of came out. My one friend had gotten it. I didn't get Nintendo until probably like a year and a half after it was out. But his parents then that had gotten him Nintendo, my friend Jason, they had the controller, the system for controller 1, like in their basement. So then like we hooked it up and we're kind of like playing around with it. It is what it is, controller, like a joystick. But 20 is the only one I haven't used on this list.
I mean,
I've used less than half of them, but yeah.
I liked 15. I liked the Wii U, but they took what worked on the Wii U and turned it into the Switch. So like the portable part of the Wii U, I liked the Wii U when it came out. It was cool because it was portable, but then they took the best part of that and turned it into the Switch. So
yeah, the Switch is essentially a handheld game system that you can hook up to your TV.
I don't even play it on my TV. I haven't played my Switch on my TV in like 2 years probably.
Yeah. So, and that's the one thing about Nintendo that I've always noticed is Nintendo is always very good on
they innovating and bringing like what they know people really kind of want to have in a game system and like creating that niche that people want. And also always being like very family oriented with their like games that they come out with and stuff like that, and nostalgia games that I know AJ likes, like Zelda and Mario and all that stuff. So where Xbox or Microsoft and Sony, they're more about like we want the online gamers, like we're hitting hard with the online gamer crowd.
Hardcore graphics and stuff. I mean, look at the controllers. Look at like 2, 4, 6, and 10. Like look, 2 and 4 are like they upgraded it to little curve, more buttons, and then they go to this drastic number 6, and then they go, drastic. Well, I won't say that drastic.
14's very drastic. 14's as drastic as you get on here.
They go to 10, and then 14 is like what kind of old school with a shitload of buttons on it? That's crazy.
14 looks like a sex wand.
So yes, it does. So it's just crazy.
Just make a perverted comment.
Yes, it did.
He did.
Wow.
Make
me over.
And you know what? I didn't like the N64 controller. I did not like the N64 controller. I hated that controller.
It took me a while to get adjusted to the N64
I didn't particularly like it either. It wasn't one of my favorites.
Yeah, the first time I remember going over to my cousin's house and playing the N64. It took me quite a few times to get used to the
to get a joystick in the middle makes no sense. I'm like, what the hell? It's like it's out of place.
In the middle is a little weird.
Yeah. The concept. See, I like that controller because the concept is depending on what type of game you play. You can hold the controller in different fashions, so you don't have to hold it on the sides. You can hold it at the left and the middle.
Yeah.
Whatever. If you're lefty or righty. I mean, it worked because Sony and Xbox stole the concept of the joystick from Nintendo and put it on their controllers.
Yep. Yes, they did.
It's been there ever since.
I would say probably my favorite controller out of all these was number 9, the original PlayStation controller. No, I'm sorry, number 7, the original PlayStation controller. I love that controller because it was so simple. Like, and I love PS1. Yeah. Like, I love that system. Like, I'd still play that system now if I had one. But yeah.
I see. I don't even know. Like, I still have my Sega Genesis. I have an NES somewhere in storage. I have, what's the other one I have? Oh, the Turbo Graphics. No, not Turbo Graphics. That's not the one I have. It's it's the name of a car. Fuck, Jaguar.
Oh, the Sega Jaguar.
Atari. No,
the
Atari, yeah, that's right. That was Atari.
Yeah, I have a
The
Jaguar.
Jaguar, the Lynx, and the Sega Saturn.
I have a Jaguar. Those are the only old systems I still have. Oh no, I have a PS1 too somewhere that I modded. I had a friend mod for me. When the modding was originally started, so
Mhm.
you had to open up the actual PS1, and there was a chip you can get
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
solder in there, so you can
I
play
had that.
Japanese. So you can
Yep.
so you can play Japanese games. Because I used to go to Q Mart, right? And they had a video. I'm not sure if the video game store is still at Q Mart, but in the middle, when you walk in, it was all the way to the left. The guy used to get Japanese games because modding was kind of the thing then. And every time I went in there, I used to buy Dragon Ball Z. I would get all the Dragon Ball Z games, and I'd sit there and I'd put it in, and the games worked, and I just had to figure out. I just winged it. I don't know Japanese, but hey, shit, I winged it. And I was able to play games. So
I think that's start. Select maybe.
So yeah.
Yeah, there was no Google
was
back
fun
there to be able to
times.
go, what? Please tell me
No.
what this symbol means.
No.
There was a
Nope.
that when I was in college, there was a kid who I used to buy alcohol for who put a mod chip in my PlayStations, and he would burn games for me before they came out. So I benefited from buying alcohol for him. He put a mod chip in my PlayStation. So
Yep, it's good stuff. Good stuff with that.
I only have 18, 19, and 20 are the only systems I currently own though. So I don't have any of the old ones.
So kind of along these lines about the video game systems. I don't know if any of you guys know what Watch Mojo is.
I've heard of it, but I don't know what it is.
It's a YouTube channel where they do like a lot of countdowns about like things from like, music, movies, TV, video games, stuff like that.
Okay.
Well, this week I saw they had a series of polls, which I found interesting, which had to do with video game consoles.
They had a
Now,
series of polls. Were there big ones, small ones, medium-sized ones?
Yeah.
You need the perfect stripper pole for the strippers.
A
Anyway,
really small poll right there.
anyway, they did 3 separate polls for the 3 big video game companies, Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo, where the question was, which of their consoles do you think was the most impressive and must own at the time of its initial release? So they started it with Sony. So the choices were PS 1 through 5. And I was also interested to see like the dates of the release. It said PS1 was 94, PS2 was 2000, PS3 was 06, PS4 was 2013, and PS5 was last year. So what would you guys say? Like which of those 5 do you think was the most impressive and must own at the time of its release?
The PS2.
You
I'd
said
have to say
PS2?
PS2.
Yes.
Yep. Joe?
Yeah, same.
Yeah, I said PS2 as well. So they got 164,000 responses for that. 59% said the PS2.
Well, and here's the thing with the PS2. The PS2 took a huge, like a fucking monstrous leap in gameplay
Graphics.
and graphics. Like it set the benchmark for graphics.
I remember because it would have been my second and final year at Notre Dame. Somebody in my hall got a PS2 for Christmas and of course brought it back with them. And like one day I was just kind of, wandering around, and I saw the graphics of that game and I think I literally went just like stopped dead in my tracks. It was like it was
awesome.
It was astounding. It was like, holy shit, I can't believe they achieved this level of like realism and like like fluid movements and so just the overall graphics were amazing. So
Yeah, I was at that time when I came out, I was like, oh man, it's never gonna get better than this. This is gonna be the best graphics ever. It's never gonna get better.
Yeah. So just to kind of finish, like I said, 59% said the PS2, 15% said the PS4, 10% said the PS5, 9% said the PS3, and 7% said the PS1 or PS1.
Unfortunately, anything after PS2, we already knew graphics were just going to go up and up.
Yeah.
So there should be
Right.
nothing that's going to, they're not going to, there's nothing that they're really going to do that's going to fucking wow us anymore, to be honest with you.
Right. So moving on to Microsoft, same question. Which Xbox console do you think was the most impressive and must own at the time of its release? Was it the original Xbox in 2001, the 360 in 2005, the Xbox One in 2013, or what they refer to as the Xbox Series X, which came out last year?
I would say the 360 for me. So
Same.
I would say the original Xbox was probably the biggest one, just because it was the first thing to actually legitimately compete with PS2.
I think the thing with the 360 is like it upped the graphics, but at the same time it upped
they changed the controller too. They changed
a little bit that, but I think for as far as gameplay, that's when the 360 came out. That's when they really upped their ante with online gaming.
Right.
Okay. So I have no bones because I've never actually played an Xbox system that I can recall. So they got 115,000 votes for that. 74% said the 360.
Wow.
9% for both the Xbox One and the most recent Xbox Series X, and 8% for the original Xbox.
Wow.
So yeah. All right, now Nintendo. Your choices are the way they put it is, which Nintendo home 3D console do you think was the most impressive and must own at the time of release? And the choices were the N64 from 1996, the GameCube from 2001, the Wii from 2006, the Wii U from 2012, or the Switch from 2017.
This one's hard because I wanted all of them the day they came out.
I would say the Wii just because of what it did.
Going to say the 64.
Okay. What did you say, Jeremy?
I said the Wii just because of the way the gameplay was and how different it was from anything else out there.
Okay. Joe said the N64.
I'm going to say the 64, but I think the 64 is what is going to win this category. But the Switch for me is the one I had to have because it's a portable gaming system. So like that was the one I had to have. I had to have all of them, but for me personally, the Switch was the one that I wanted the most.
All right. So I would also say the 64 because that's when I was, for one reason is because I was still kind of into it at the point, but I also seem to remember being really wowed by what I saw by the N64 compared to what was like available at the time and everything. 45% said the N64 out of 111,000 votes. 26% said the Wii. 15% said the Switch. 12% for the GameCube, and only 2% for the Wii U. So I thought it was interesting to see.
I mean, really, you know, like the PlayStation and the Nintendo 64, like those all came out in like a 5-year period. I think all three of the systems that got mentioned that were like, they all came out in a small period of time. So I just, like I said, the N64 Ocarina of Time is my favorite game of all time, and that was on the N64. So I don't know what I would do without my Switch at this point. Like that's the system, like that's my favorite video game system of all time.
He's going to take that to the Jonas Brothers concert. He's going to take his Nintendo Switch.
No,
he usually takes it everywhere though.
They won't let me in with that probably.
No, they will not.
They're going to think I'm going to
do with
take
that
videos
game system.
Yeah, they're going to think I'm going to take. I'm like, I can take my phone in where I might take videos on this, but
they don't even give a shit about that anymore. They don't. You should see the amount of freaking phones that go up and start recording shit and going live.
I know.
The artists finally got to a point where they're just like, you can't stop them. Like it's impossible. Just whatever. And they realize it's just publicity for them anyways. It's just, you know, more people get to see them and get to recognize them. So why the hell not do it? They embraced it.
We went to me and Nicole, we went to a NXT like house show one time, and I think people got kicked out of there for recording. They came up and told them to stop recording, like I went on their phones. Like that's the only time I've ever seen that happen. I think it was at an NXT house show where they were like, we told you can't record when the show started or whatever. They like came up, there were people sitting around us and they scolded them.
And that I can understand because those were not aired yet. They were recording those to air later. So if people put that up on the internet before it happened,
Vince is still smarting from the curtain call.
so
I mean,
Yeah.
they kick. I read spoilers. I do. If the wrestling spoilers come up, I read them. They kicked people out of NXT a couple weeks ago. They taped like 3 episodes, and the spoilers came out from the first ones, but nothing came out for the other 2 because they kicked the people out. They caught the people that were doing it and kicked them out, and there were no spoilers for the 2 weeks after that. And I don't really want to watch NXT every week now if I don't have to, because it's going to turn into a pile of shit. It's starting. So I want to read the spoilers for that. So I'm like, do I need to watch this one or not? Because 6 months from now, I don't know if I'm going to watch NXT anymore.
What, the wedding wasn't spectacularly awesome?
I mean, to each his own. I personally thought it was a train wreck, but
It looked like it.
There are people out there. A lot of people liked it. So, I mean, my friend Jay texted me during it and said, this is terrible. And I said, apparently Dexter Lumis is Orange Cassidy. He can't talk, but he can do a thumbs up. So I'm like, okay. I mean, they successfully got married, but that should not have been the last thing that happened on the show. They had a 4-way match that was arguably the match of the week on all of wrestling. They had that match before the wedding. So the wedding was more important than this 4-way match for the NXT title that ended up being probably the best match of the week. I think they goofed up there and putting the wedding last.
That's
so
Pretty much.
man. What are you
and
gonna do?
Beth Phoenix has been like creaming her pants every week about this wedding. I was so tired of hearing about her. And then of course she came up and ended up being the person to marry them.
Yeah, that was
I
quite
saw.
interesting.
The only part that was funny was when they were like, does anybody oppose to this wedding? And all these people raised their hand, and then Dexter Lumis opened his jacket and he had like an axe in the pocket, and everybody put their hand down.
Like, I will throw this at you
So
if you put your hand up.
I don't like Dexter Lumis. He's been around for a year and he doesn't talk at all. So it's
Still,
just
like after a
he
year,
still
they
doesn't
don't have him
talk.
talking.
Like Orange Cassidy
No.
has talked here and there. Like Orange Cassidy's had moments when he's spoken. So Dexter Lumis, the only thing he's ever said is "I do." That's it. Like that's the only time he's ever talked is to say that. And I'm just like, you have to have character development at this point. You can't just
That is his development. I do. So, all right. Anybody else have any last words before we sign off for the day?
Yes, I have some
We're
bad.
signing off for the day.
I have some bad news. The annual Primetime Emmy Awards are going on right now, and unfortunately, Giancarlo Esposito did not win Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Drama Series for his role as Moff Gideon in The Mandalorian.
Oh, that is sad. That is sad.
The show, The Mandalorian, is nominated for Best Drama Series as it was last year, but I think it'll be a cold day in hell before they give an Emmy award to the Star Wars series. Now, if it happened,
Yeah.
I think it would be awesome, but it's like the fact that it's even getting nominated, I think, is an accomplishment in and of itself. But I also noticed that what's her name? Catherine Hahn was nominated for WandaVision.
Yes.
She did not win either. But
The
again, it's just interesting that they're even nominating, those kind of shows for these award shows anymore.
the publicity stunt that WWE pulled on Monday night on Raw, where they had Big E win the belt. I think it's funny that they did it because they were trying to beat AEW in the male demographic, and they still didn't beat them, even though they gave us a publicity stunt Monday night. So, and they're trying to do it again. They're trying to do it again this week because they're going to give us a match that should be happening at Survivor Series. I was getting that on Raw.
Yeah, I was going to say, you
Wait,
and I
what?
were on the phone. You and I were on the phone Friday night, and you were saying, I think we're going to see that at Survivor Series. No, we're going to see it on Raw on Monday.
And it's because AEW is doing Omega versus Danielson Wednesday. So like this is like we're seeing this now where they're like, all right, we got to do this because they're doing this. Like we're starting to see it. I don't know if that's good though. I don't know if it's necessarily good
But
because
the tag match for tomorrow night?
the 6-man tag.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I'm stoked for it because I'm going to Raw.
Oh, okay.
I can see
Well,
Roman Reigns on.
For
I don't
you,
give a fuck. It's
you-
not going to be a shit show now. That's
You're in a
that's my concern.
for you personally, I am excited that you get to see that, Joe. But I think that they're gonna, remember when WCW gave Hulk Hogan versus Goldberg away for free? The wheels started coming off at that point. So, they got to be careful when you start giving us matches that should be on pay-per-views for free just because you're trying to compete with a company that's on a different night than you, and you can't even beat them in an 18-49 demo when you have Big E win the belt. That's bad to me that you can't beat them in that demo when you have that. You pull that shit on a Monday night and you can't beat them still. That just Raw's in a bad place right now. For you, Joe, I'm glad you get to see that though.
All right, so
my only thing to that too is you keep seeing all these quotes and in the on the websites and everything where it's they insist that they're not hot shotting anything or they're not doing this or that in reaction to AEW.
They are.
Yeah, right.
You cannot even try to make that sound plausible now with what AEW's done over the last month.
You can't tell us that it's because you care about what the fans think and you want to give them something better, because that would have started months and months ago if you really cared.
Years ago, months ago, that would have started years ago.
And wasn't it? When was that? How long ago was that now? Where Vince and Stephanie and I think either Shane or Linda were no, I think it was Vince, Stephanie, and Triple H were in the ring.
And we're going to give the fans what they want.
We hear you. We're going to give you what you want. And the only thing that we've really seen since then, again, I don't remember exactly when that was, but what have they really given the fans what they want since then, other than maybe Becky Lynch? Where they decide. Yeah, I guess you could say the Kofi thing, but again, then remember how that ended. So. They ended it as a
spectacular fashion. That's how it ended, in the greatest way possible.
Right.
Of course, Jeff Hardy's on the show tomorrow night.
But what I mean by that, of course, is that they ended.
I know.
They ended it in a way where it was basically as if to say, it was all a dream. It never happened.
We'll get to see Alexa tomorrow night. That stokes me.
There you go.
Jeremy, if you want to we can be done and I can just bullshit with these guys if you got to go do something.
All right. So I did want to say that before we sign off and call it a night for all our fans is we are going to be doing just like we've been doing. We will be live again for the next wrestling pay-per-view, which is I should say the next big wrestling pay-per-view, which is Survivor Series, and that's going to be happening in November, if I remember correctly. Yeah. So that's the next time. So if you want to tune in, if you're like, oh man, I love listening to you guys talk about wrestling and do the wrestling shows, tune in for that one in November. We'll give you the exact date when it comes up, unless AJ already has it, because he usually does. And that one will be completely wrestling bullshit and making fun of matches and always asking the question, why? Why are they doing that? Because we're not sure.
I mean, there's some pretty heavy rumors that Dwayne is going to be there.
November 21st.
Yeah,
November 21st. All right.
From the Barclays Center.
Ooh, the Barclays Center. Awesome. So if you want to tune in on that time, that would be a great time if you want to get your fill of wrestling for 4 hours, then that's the time to do it. But as always, we just really, really want to say thank you to anybody who's, tuning in and watching this live on Facebook, watches it later on YouTube, or is listening at some point in time on any of the podcast audio versions, which is, of course, you got Stitcher, you got Apple Podcasts, you've got Spotify, you've got Amazon Music, you've got Pandora. We're on all of those. Oh, we're on iHeartRadio too, some way. I don't even know. I put us on there at some point in time too.
Stitcher.
Yep, Stitcher.
Still on Stitcher.
Yeah, we're still on Stitcher. We're on all those things. So however you're seeing us or listening to us, we appreciate you listening. I put up on our Facebook page that we're over 1,000 downloads now, so that's pretty impressive to us because when we first started out, I was like, I don't know if we're going to get to 100 downloads ever. But now we're up over 1,000, and our biggest one to date, which is still getting tons of downloads, is bass thumping rap music.
The music one. That's
The
When
music
Pat
one.
wasn't on.
Yes, Pat was not on that one. I don't think that's why.
It's not because of you, Pat. It's not because of you.
People love Pat. I think they don't. I don't know who. I don't know. We'd have to put a poll out there one time. Who don't you like? But
I'll do it too.
but thank you to everybody for always tuning in and watching. We just greatly appreciate it because we have fun doing this, and we always want to just entertain people. So with that, we say good evening, good morning, good afternoon, and we'll catch you guys on the next episode.